Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Israel is under attack by the Arabs in Gaza. At least 7 rockets fired at Jerusalem on Monday. And as I'm speaking right now, more red alert sirens going off in the south of the country, in Ashkelon, the northern industrial zone, and the areas north of Gaza. Joining me today on the show is Tovia Singer, Rabbi Tovia Singer.
Well, it's great being on with you, Tamar. You know, we're on every single day, and it's great to keep this rhythm steady of on every day, you and me together, broadcasting not only to the Holy Land, but around the world.
I think this is a nightmare I'm having. Okay, I don't know. Whenever Toby and I get together, we're always laughing and joking, but it's so hard to laugh and joke when you see what's going on in the country right now. The South is under dozens of barrages of rockets over their towns and villages. And we are now under threat. The Islamic Jihad has said that they're going to make an attack on Israel. We're going to see what happens there. So, Tovia, I mean, where do you want to take the show?
Yeah, we were going, I was coming down to the Western Wall when all this unfolded. It was rather shocking. But you have to remember that we have a new leader of Israel, and that's President Biden, and that's where apparently Israel is taking its cues from, restraint, and this is the result. This is the consequences of Israel's new leadership in Washington.
Okay, we're getting more red alert signals coming in. And I'm just trying to see where this is taking place right now. Which cities in Israel? This is in Kerem Shalom. That's along the Gaza Strip area. We are praying for the safety of our brothers and sisters there. And we are pre-taping. We're actually live, but we're doing this a special now on Monday evening Israel time, just after 9 p.m. And the show will play in my morning slot. I think that Israel's not going to have a quiet night tonight, but we'll find out. Don't go anywhere, everybody. We're going to be right back with Tovia and Tamar.
How did a nice Jewish girl from Delaware end up living in Israel? Shalom, I'm Natalie Sapinski. Join me on my show, Returning Home. Meet different people who have moved to Israel. Hear their personal stories, their highs, their lows, and everything in between. Each week, we talk to experts on immigration and the process of moving to Israel. Listen to Returning Home every Thursday, only on Israel News Talk Radio.
All right, we are here doing a special live broadcast as Israel is under attack by a ragtag bunch of terrorists in Gaza. Whether it is the Hamas or the Islamic Jihad, we're going to be talking about what's going on, and I'm being joined by none other than... What was his name?
Tovia Singer, here,
him.
joining Tamar Yonah on breaking news. We're breaking the news right here. And it was very, very strange. I confess, having spent years in Indonesia, I'm approaching now my second year since I made Aliyah. And I think it's the first time I've heard these sirens in Jerusalem. I don't recall hearing them before. And I was just walking down to the Kotel, and suddenly the sirens went off. That eerie wailing went off, and all the police started just saying, "Everyone spread out and get against the wall." One of the things that was very striking is that Damascus, the walk to Damascus Gate, which normally the Jerusalem Day Parade normally would go, was blocked off completely by huge trucks. So there was only one possible way to go. You're walking along the wall towards Jaffa Gate, and suddenly the sirens go off, and having a conversation with someone, and we just walked behind the building, and the conversation continued, and the wailing went, and I confess it seemed very, very surreal to me. I felt a sense of calmness, and then boom, and you can hear from where I was standing. So there are trucks right there blocking that major intersection where you can go to Damascus Gate. So when you hear the sirens, you hear also screaming and from the other side of the trucks. So the other side of the trucks is where Damascus Gate is, and that's in the area where our cousins are, who seemed apparently had a very different reaction to it. And so you had like cheering and clapping from one side, and then you had people just, I don't know, sort of concerned. It was, and then you heard the boom, and it was very, very real. And then you wondered, where did it land? Is anybody harmed? Was that an interception? It was very, very difficult to tell. One of the points that's important to note is that really it's not like something happened tonight out of nowhere, but in fact, all these days leading up to Yom Yerushalayim, to this day that we celebrate the reunification of Jerusalem, there's been just an enormous amount of a sense of tension in the air and violence on the Temple Mount and the area of Damascus Gate. Damascus Gate being sort of the northern part of the old city. And
so this was your first time under red alert sirens, and you were standing up and looking at the sky as the interceptions were taking place, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so already, wait a second, already you're a novice because you're not supposed to be standing up when the red alert sirens, outside. If you're in your house in your safe room, you can be standing up. But when you're outside, you are not supposed to be standing up, Tovia Singer. You're supposed to be down on the ground.
All right. Let me tell you something crazy, Tamar. Really, this is going to sound off the wall because I'm going to dial the clock back to 2005, to August 2005. And I know where you were, and you know where I was. I was in Gaza, and you were up dealing with other communities that were set to be destroyed in horrible days in the middle of a very dark summer. And I remember standing next to Aaron Klein, who was a very famous journalist, and these sirens would go off. I don't remember how the sirens sounded then, because what is that, 16
They probably had
years
Seva
ago?
Seva Adom, which means color red.
We didn't go into the bunker, and Aaron Klein and I stood outside, and we saw a Qassam rocket. I mean, a Qassam rocket went off, I don't know, maybe 100 meters away from us, and you could feel the boom in your chest, that when a missile goes off. There was a certain calmness that people had back then that stayed with me all over the years, so that I didn't react in any way nervously to it, because compared to what I had observed for months in Gaza, in Gush Katif, this is nothing. This was child's play.
Okay, but listen, the fact that you got to see the rocket in the sky or the interception, I think all of us have seen that. But the point is that when you're standing up, if the bomb should hit near you, you just said that the Qassam missile came within 100 meters of you, you said. So when that
Something
hits,
like that, yeah.
Okay, so when that hits, you have to, I wish that people could see me right now, but it hits to a point, and then it goes up in the air, the shrapnel, and spreads out everywhere. And if you're standing up, you have much more of a chance to get shrapnel injury in your body than if you're lying down flat on the floor, because then you would only get it if you were directly hit by it. But if you're not directly hit, that shrapnel is going everywhere, and you should be down.
You see, I didn't get the memo growing up in Brooklyn. So it was a little different, because in Brooklyn, when they say
So I'll teach you.
We didn't think that way. That's not how we thought. So right, I didn't know that. And today, for me, I'll tell you that this has happened to you many times, but isn't there a certain surreal feeling like this is happening and like Hashem is watching over you, and you just and it's like Hamas says that we're going to shoot missiles at Jerusalem at 6 p.m. I remember looking at my watch going, whoa, it's about 6 o'clock, nothing's happened yet. And I think it was around 6:02 or something like that. I don't know exactly what, but it was very, very shortly afterwards. It wasn't, because at 6, nothing happened. And I thought maybe the guy, got stuck in the thing, the igniter. I don't know, shooting off the bottle. Whatever it was, there was a lot of people there. Listeners need to know there were I don't know, there may be even thousands of people in the middle of that square where, where it says, I love Jerusalem, with those big giant letters are, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if there were 1,000 or 3,000 people there, but there was something so surreal about it. Yeah, those giant trucks there, and they use those trucks that no one can get through. Nothing gets through. Technically, I could have gotten through because I have a press pass, but I'm not in the mood to go to Damascus Gate today. But so it was a very eerie thing. This was not like you stop walking the street and the siren goes off. There's trucks, there's thousands of people there, and this wailing siren goes off. And the cops were really very nice about it. They were going, just spread out, and not going, really? Okay, so you did, and I'm just looking up at the sky. And as I said, I don't know these things. I don't know, like, when they're shooting guns. I don't know. There are people who know what kind of ammunition they're using. I don't.
When they shoot guns, also duck. That's what you do. You duck.
There you go. I don't know what kind of gun. I know guys in the Army that know a difference between an AK-47 and a Magnum, whatever it is. They know. I don't. I think I was raised by decent people. I have no clue. I wouldn't learn these things. So it's so it was very surreal, I confess. I didn't know what to do. No one handed me a little pamphlet going down.
Okay, you're a greener. You're a greener.
I don't know.
You're a novice. You don't know. You have to get seasoned like us, tough and seasoned. All right, so let's go over some of the facts. Israel had many barrages of rocket fire on its south. It's continuing to have it all evening long. Jerusalem attacked, which is the capital city of Israel, and therefore when something like that is attacked, the government has to respond because it's a matter not just of putting more confidence in its citizens, but just as a cultural response. You don't have your capital city attacked and then you don't do anything. And the Arabs look at it as weakness, and it emboldens them and whets their appetite even more. Netanyahu's response has been, Israel will respond with great force. We saw Benny Gantz, the defense minister, saying the same thing, and the Israeli citizens are yawning, especially those who live in the south. Now, the people in the south, they're constantly hit by rocket fire. And Israel, of course, always wants to keep the escalation down. They want to keep the temperature down. They don't want escalation. But now, after Jerusalem was attacked, they have to retaliate. They have already sent in the Air Force in Gaza. Reportedly, at least 11 Arabs in Gaza were killed in Israel Air Force strikes. And God is protecting the Jewish people. He puts an umbrella of love over us. They bomb us and they attack us with rockets. And thank God our casualties are so few.
Yeah. Maybe we could talk about this in the next segment. And that is that I think what Israel's doing is it's looking to immediately stem violence in the immediate moment. Well, what they're doing is in the long term, it brings about so much more violence. So it's true that there's a Band-Aid in that the restraint sort of tapers down the immediate violence. But what it does is it incentivizes terrorism in the long term. Look, if they had listened in the beginning, they would have never evacuated 8,500 Jews from Gaza. Look at the price we're paying for it now. Synagogues, where synagogues stood, now a rocket launcher. So That's, I think, part of the disease, the really the bad thinking that's going on. Is like, how do you put out the fire now? How do you keep appease Washington? How do you keep things down now? But in the long term, the consequences are great.
Talking about fire, as we go to the break, Har Habayit, the Temple Mount, was on fire. There's pictures on the internet that you can see. This is the first time in 2,000 years I can remember, at least, that the Temple Mount has been on fire. We're going to talk about that as well when we get back.
Shalom, everybody. Making a difference often takes just one moment and one person at a time. I am Orly Benny Davis, your show host on Israel News Talk Radios from Jerusalem with Love. You'll be hearing people talking about politics, religion, social issues, and making a better tomorrow. Join me, Orly Benny Davis, for God and Country. From Jerusalem with Love.
Wednesdays on Israel News Talk Radio.
All right, we are back here on a special live broadcast. This is Tamar Yonah, and I'm here with my co-host,
Tovia Singer.
Wake up, Tovia.
Joining you during this is a very exciting moment for me.
This is Tovia.
You have to understand. You have to go easy on me. Go easy. I'm not used to being over there.
I mean, we're under attack and he's sleeping, so.
Yes. You know what I did? I broadcast from my bunker, my rocket-proof room. I'm not kidding. And but I never close. There's a steel door that closes the window. It's like
he's in a safe room, like a bomb shelter.
Safe room, like a bomb shelter, right? So I actually closed for the first time in 2 years. I actually closed that. It's like 1.5 inches thick of steel, and I just closed it tonight because there's supposed to be actually more launchings tonight. I would expect. Although I'm a little surprised, I want to bounce this past you. And then we're going to go to the tree that went up on fire on the Har Habayit. But it is unusual that Hamas would target Jerusalem with missiles, because for them there's a chance that they may not. It may be an Arab who's killed rather than a Jew. So they're much more comfortable shooting at Tel Aviv, where the chances are overwhelming that they're going to kill Jews. I think that it's just my recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not usual for missiles to target Yerushalayim. This is not their standard MO.
They don't care that they kill their own. They call them shaheeds.
No. I'm talking historically. When Saddam Hussein, he was launching his rockets, they were going to Tel Aviv, not to Yerushalayim. I think I'm just turning the Rolodex back of time. It's very unusual for that to happen in Jerusalem. Because Jerusalem, they can hit and they might kill an Arab.
Tovia,
I remember time.
I'm trying
this is
to remember
very
when
sad,
Saddam. You're talking about the Gulf War. And I was living in Jerusalem in the city center at that time. And I remember being, I won't say where I was, but I remember being under red alerts, sirens going off because he was shooting at Jerusalem. People, as you said, were shocked because he might hit the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Right.
So he did.
Right.
So the Arabs don't care about life and they don't care about property. They just care about killing Jews and getting their 72 virgins. I should say the Arab Islamists, I should say. I shouldn't generalize too much. But, I just want to say here that the Arabs, I want to remind everybody what Tovia said earlier in the show, that the Arabs, when Jerusalem was under the red alert sirens because of missiles coming towards it, the Arabs on the Temple Mount were cheering and celebrating. This is not normal behavior.
That was very striking. That was really very striking. So imagine this. So you have this very eerie siren wail, which so it's ever present, right? And then you're staring at the sky, and people are just telling you to move towards a wall. And again, so that huge intersection right there at the old city, huge open area. There are 3 trucks that are positioned so that no one can cross from where we are to the Damascus Gate area. That's that whole purpose. But all the people there who are on the other side, on the Damascus, you can hear cheers and howling and screaming. And then when the boom went off, I think it was an interception. I'm not sure.
2 booms.
But whatever it was.
Yeah.
It was whatever.
Okay.
So imagine this cacophony of noise, and it's really surreal. But to hear screaming and cheering from the other side of those trucks, the giant trucks, like imagine I don't know, 3 18-wheelers. This is not my field, but whatever, giant trucks, you can't even see anything. But everybody else is on the other side.
Just a minute.
And they are cheering.
Yeah, Tovia, we're getting more red alert sirens right now. This is in Ein HaShlosha. Okay, so we're talking about the Gaza area, the Gaza Belt area. We pray for our brothers and sisters' safety over there. So I want to say that just to follow up on what you're talking about, the Arabs bombing other, in Jerusalem, and they might kill their own people, Arabs. The Hamas themselves, they're right now down, deep down in their bunkers, safe from any Israeli Air Force attacks, and they're leaving their population and their people to lisfog, to absorb the whatever Israel has coming its way in order to make Hamas pay a heavy price to deter them from wanting to keep up this escalation that they're doing.
Right, and they know very well that there's going to be a response from Israel, and they know very well that they're using their own population as human shields, and that they're hoping that their people will die, and then they hope that they'll have secure seize those photographs and use them as propaganda. That's really unfortunate. So for them, it's using their own people as a way of advancing their own. It's really is a very, very shocking thing. It's very, very unfortunate. And that's why I'll tell you this tomorrow. I was going to ask you this question. I mean, when I speak to Arabs here in Eretz Yisrael, personally, none of them tell me they support Fatah or Hamas. They consider them completely corrupt. I know there's craziness going on, but they're not. I don't think they're admired by the population, but because they use their population as a shield and as a way to advance themselves.
A lot of the Arabs that are living in Israel have so many rights, and they're doing so well. They're prospering that. And they know that these other terrorist regimes are corrupt. You're correct. But at the same time, there's pressure on them in order to join the resistance. One of them was a taxi driver that my brother-in-law, he rides with the Arabs all the time, and the Arab is friendly with him. And he's saying, they're trying to get all of us in the village to give up one of our children. To be like, I don't know if it was to strap a bomb on them or something, but to give up one of their kids to the movement. He says, I don't know what to do. Should I do it? I don't know what to do. So, you can't, look, it's a different people living in our land, and there's going to be conflict there. But I do want to say one thing, Tovia, and then you can tell me how you feel about this as well. Because when I see this going on, it incenses me because, number one, you have this ragtag bunch of terrorists who are going to decide when they're going to open fire against Israel. They're going to decide whether our children are going to go to school the next day because the Israeli government has now put out new guidelines for residents and any residents who live within a 40-kilometer range from Gaza. There will be no school tomorrow, and these people need to stay home, and they need to stay near their homes. So the Hamas or the Islamic Jihad, whichever terrorists are launching these rockets, they're deciding whether our kids go to school the next day. They're deciding whether people are going to go to work the next day, and they're deciding whenever they want to hit Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, or they can even reach Haifa, by the way, now as well, where a lot of Arabs live. They rule the roost, and Israel is just always absorbing these things and always trying to keep down to not let it escalate. And this incenses me. And on top of that, it's what we call a chilul Hashem. It is a desecration of God's name when these criminals, these murderers, do what they do and hold Israel hostage. I think it's a chilul Hashem, a desecration. What do you think?
No, of course I agree. It all goes back to, how do you deal with the immediate problem versus long term, and who is wise, who can anticipate the future. And Israel's making this mistake over and over again, dealing with in the short term to resolve the short term problem, and not realizing that this is creating a long term, because you're raising the expectations, and it's a bad idea. I wanted to talk about what's going on in Temple Mount. That is, trees on the Temple Mount lit on fire. I don't know how they were lit on fire, but I've never heard of that before. Have you, Tamar?
Not for the last 2,000 years. I haven't heard about any fires on the Temple Mount.
Trees on fire. And, during the break, Tamar and I were talking about this. It seems to me, just looking at the video, because this happened after I had left the Kotel Plaza,
The Western Wall.
It just seems to me, what do I know, but that like an accelerant was used, that they were lit because the fire was quite large. And I don't think you could just, it's not my field, that you could just light trees on fire. It actually is, in a way, a good thing, because there's actually a prohibition of having trees on the Temple Mount. You're not allowed to plant any tree on the Temple Mount. You're not allowed to have any wooden structures on the Temple Mount. In fact, when you go on the Temple Mount, you're supposed to remove trees, remove branches, and they caught on to that. Now it's forbidden by the WAF for any Jew to remove tree. I'm not kidding. This sounds so crazy. It must sound so insane.
There's more red alert sirens going off right now in the south. Nativ HaSarah and Michlelet Sapir, that's a college in Sderot, near Am, Erez, Miflasim, all over the south near the Gaza Strip, more rocket fire. This is probably at least a dozen rocket fires in the south. All right, we have to go to another break. When we get back, we're going to be talking more about this. Feel free to call in if you're listening while the show is airing live between 9 to 10 p.m. Israel time. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
This is Shai Bentako, and each week I'll be webcasting to you from Judea, origin of the word Jew, a people besieged and beleaguered in every generation. Nazi Germany's but a memory, but in its place the world invented the phantom Palestinians as this generation's internationally authorized Jew killers. Tune in for a different slant on life in Israel, Phantom Nation, every Monday.
Hi, I'm Rabbi David Aaron. The soul basics are the most profound, the most essential, and yet often the most neglected in our education. Join me for Soul Talk on Israel's News Talk Radio and discover the secrets to love, spiritual growth, and personal power.
We are back, Israel News Talk Radio. Tamar Yonah joining me on my regular broadcast. Crisis in Jerusalem.
Oh, another red alert
Hamas.
siren. Sorry.
You can't do that.
The Hamas is interrupting you. It's not me. It's the Hamas. There are another more red alerts on Israel. This is again in Israel's south. Those poor people, every 5 minutes, they're getting rocket fire on them. This is in near Am, Sderot. The Erez crossing the area. It's just terrible. Go ahead, Tovia.
No, it's and I think that Israel's incentivizing this by their behavior, And
explain.
this is well, I think what they're saying is that violence is going to be rewarded, and that if you imagine if someone would if Cuba would launch missiles against Fort Lauderdale, what the response might be. I mean, any country that would launch an attack, if I was in Indonesia and Malaysia attacked Indonesia, there would be an incredible response, because you have to wipe out your enemy. And number two is you have to send a message to the enemy. And the message has to be that if you do this, that there are going to be very, very severe consequences. And, as you said, they don't care about their own people very much. And they realize that the response is going to be very, very measured. All the things we do with these Iron Dome systems, I mean, that's crazy. That's just to protect Hamas. It's not really to protect us. And I know the listeners are going, what are you talking about? But the entire Iron Dome system it protects Palestinians, doesn't protect Israel. Because imagine for a moment, if this seems surprising, I mean, that's why this came from the left. The whole Iron Dome system was thought of by Amir Peretz. The Iron Dome, imagine for a moment there is no Iron Dome system. Imagine it doesn't exist. There's no anti-missile system. So what would Israel have to do? Israel would have to go in and deploy much more force against Gaza, in order to destroy the enemy. But now Israel, because it has a way of shooting essentially projectiles out of the air, it acts in a much more restrained way in attacking Hamas. The Iron Dome system protects Hamas. It doesn't. It only superficially seems to protect Israel, but it doesn't, because if Israel didn't have it, it would have to respond much more aggressively to Gaza. So, and this would never happen in any other scenario. If you were on Interstate 80 outside of, just crossed the George Washington Bridge, and you're passing by Paterson, New Jersey, and I picked Paterson because that's where the terrorists hit out before 9/11, and someone was shooting at cars, people wouldn't invent a gun that could shoot bullets out of the air. You'd find the guy who's shooting it and the people behind it, and you would destroy them. So this kind of thinking is really, it's quite deranged. I know Israelis have a love and affection for technology, but this is a silly technology. What really has to happen is you're dealing with a cancer, and it has to be removed so that people could live here in peace. And I don't mean just for Jewish people, but there are people who are in this country who care about the Jewish state, so we can all live in peace. All this incentivizes the worst form of humanity in the Middle East.
Yeah, I agree. We have a bunch of killers living in Gaza. They're murderers, and I don't believe in just striking back. It's like swatting at a wasp. The wasp is just going to get angrier, and it's going to attack you. And we have these murderers living there. You don't hit them. You destroy them. You finish with it. And you're not being kind by being tolerant or trying to use kid gloves. You're being cruel to the Arabs who are living in Gaza, who hate the Hamas and would love to see Israel come back in. Nobody talks about that, by the way. But
nobody gets that.
Yeah.
No, I want to bring out a point that you would never think of. I remember during the Trump administration, he had that deal he was going to make. What was that called? That deal for peace, whatever it was, that huge
deal. The deal of the century.
And part of the deal was the deal of the century. And no one got this, but when he put that forward, so part of that deal of the century was that areas in Israel where there are villages, the Arab villages, they would become part of a Palestinian state. Okay, and the Arabs who were living in the Triangle, as an example, there was Arabs there. They were the ones who freaked out completely. Everybody else knew, like we knew, that there was no way in the world that thing could ever work. No, everyone knew that it wasn't. But the people who were most frightened of that were Arab Israeli citizens, were citizens of Israel who are Arabs who going, no, we don't want to live under a Palestinian state. We want to live in a Jewish state. We want to live in Israel, and we're not giving up our Israeli citizenship. And that's the most coveted thing for an Arab, is to have Israeli citizenship or to have a residency card. I mean, that's everything. That's life. That's what they crave. So if you care about Arabs, you want Hamas to be destroyed. If you are listening to this and you care about the people in this country who are not Jewish, you don't care about Jews, you want Hamas to be destroyed, because Hamas is the one that is responsible for slaughtering their own, as in Fatah. They had a civil war in 2006 and 2007. They slaughtered each other. People don't get this. That's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and our pathetic, I'm sorry to say, but our pathetic leaders, including the wannabe leaders like Lapid and Bennett, are talking tough. They're saying, we have to handle this with iron gloves, with iron fists, and talk tough. But you know what, Tovia? While our Air Force is attacking them, while they're under fire from our tough iron gloves, they're attacking us. We're under fire from them. So how much are they being hurt? How much are they being stopped? How much are they really getting this iron glove treatment? It's talk, because none of them want to do anything, because they're all trying to scramble to make a coalition government, and they need the Arabs in the Knesset to go along and support them also, and they need the coalitions to stay together, all these little parties, and it's just talk, and in the meantime, the citizens of Israel are suffering.
Absolutely. And, I mean, this coalition they're trying to put together, I mean, do you think it has a chance that Naftali Bennett could really put together a coalition with Lapid and Meretz and this Arab party headed by Abbas? I don't see that happening. And I wanted to say one other thing before you comment on it. I don't think Naftali Bennett has a political future. I think he knows that if a coalition is not sewn together, no one who voted for him will ever vote for him again. That means he's done. He's fried now, because everyone who voted for Yamina voted for him specifically because they were concerned that they couldn't trust Netanyahu, and they felt that he is trustworthy to never compromise. I mean, that was the whole point of Yamina. No one thought Yamina would ever have a majority or able to cobble together more seats than Likud. The whole point of Naftali Bennett, I've got to say that I've never said this to anyone, and I've got to say this, the whole point of Naftali Bennett was to act as a stopgap. It was to prevent Bibi from doing the wrong thing and from moving to the left, from making concessions that he shouldn't make. And that's the whole point. That was Naftali Bennett's that's his raison d'etre. And then when the opportunity came to switch over like this, to try to sit with Meretz and Abbas, and I mean, these are really bad characters. Lapid, I don't know what the heck he stands for. I have no idea what he stands for besides turtlenecks. I have no clue what he is. I don't know what he holds up, what he believes in. He has nice suits. This is it. I want to know where he buys his shirts. He has fancy pajamas. He has fancy hair. He wears a hairdo. It's very. I have no idea what this guy believes in. But Bennett, I think, I'm just going to throw this past you. It seems to me
we have
that
2 minutes left to the show, just so you know.
Bennett is done. That means if there's another fifth election, Bennett's done. I can't imagine anyone who voted for Bennett to ever vote for him again, because he's the point. Do I have that right, or do you disagree with me on that?
I think any government that is going to be formed between Lapid and Bennett, it's not going to last at all.
But do you think that Bennett is done in the next election?
You know what? You would think. I thought that Benny Gantz would be done, because his whole platform was anyone but Bibi, and then he goes and sleeps in the same bed as Bibi. He joins the government with him, and look, he's back. And
but he only got 4 seats instead of 20
But he's back,
seats.
But he made it. I mean, who would even vote for him after what he did, right?
I got to tell you this. I just want to end with this, because the show is mainly about me. I don't understand why people hate Bibi that much. I understand why people are disappointed in him and so on. I don't understand. It seems to me that the anti-Bibi wave of feeling in this country, I ask people, like, why? And I've never had an answer that has made sense to me. We even disagree with him, but he's accomplished a lot. This country is very different. I don't get it, really. But that's
we'll have to talk about that on another show, because I have a lot to say about that. I can tell you a lot of people are just sick of him. He's been in power
But that doesn't make sense. Sick of him?
Change. What did they do? They wanted Obama because they were sick of the whole thing, and he was like this new fresh face, and they wanted change. And so a lot of the people on the left, they're sick of Bibi, and they want him out.
That's the point. It's these
and you know what? There's even a lot of right-wing people who are sick of Bibi. But personally, I think he's the only one that can unite the country. I have a lot of complaints against Bibi, but still, out of everybody,
I didn't vote for him.
I didn't vote for him either this time. I didn't vote for him this time either. But anyway,
all right.
The music is going to come on.
It was wonderful having me on tomorrow.
Yes.
It was a big privilege. You must have done a lot of mitzvahs.
Remember what you said, Tovia. And listeners, write Tovia. Write me and I'll send it to Tovia. He said every day.
Nobody can figure out how
he
you
said every day he does a show here is going to be doing a show.
Me on,
and more red alert alarms right now. Ashkelon, the whole south here. Many, many cities under a red alert siren. Now we're praying for the safety of our brothers and sisters. Thank you, everybody, for being with us, and thank you, Tovia.
Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. Just click the orange button at the top of the IsraelNewsTalkRadio.home page, log in as yourself or an anonymous guest, and join in on the fun. You'll meet other listeners from all over the world who listen to Israel News Talk Radio, and you can make new friends. Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. It's the closest you can get to being in the studio with us.
We love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.